Wait, this is something I have to watch out for at the end. Man, I love that song. Hello, not the local podcast, rather something a little more special. I thought I would treat you guys with an exclusive LNN interview with yours truly, Angela. How do you pronounce your last name? I don't want to butcher it.
Angela McArdle.
McArdle. All right, nice to meet you.
Thanks, nice to meet you.
All right, so I understand you're running as a libertarian candidate for U.S. Congress. Like that's probably the highest office I've ever talked to someone before. So I'm glad that you're the first. And what state are you running for?
California.
California. And what state is it in?
California.
Wait. Oh, sorry. What's the date when that the election is being held at?
It's a special election, and it's being held April 4th.
All right. Sorry for the mix up in words. So you're running as a libertarian candidate in one of the probably the most liberal states in our country, the most some would say. And I understand that you're pretty much going to have to run off of social issues. So let's take a look at your website. Let's get a look on some of the social issues that are for. So I would suppose that you're for privatization.
You're breaking up a little bit there, but did you ask if I was for privatization of healthcare?
No, of marriage rather than just legalizing it as a whole.
Absolutely. I don't think the federal government should be involved in personal relationships.
Yeah. With marriage, would you also be against rather the like someone like Ron Paul, who would say social issues are more left up to the states? Where would you rather it go to the states, or would you rather it be more privatized?
I would be happy really with anything that involves less federal government interference. So a big part of my platform is pushing states' rights, seeing powers delegated back to the state. What would be even better than that would be to see things really a power handed back to people and the free market. So does that sort of answer your question?
Yeah. But with my view, I always saw that the First Amendment kind of gave citizens a right to expression, and if we're going to, give the interpretation of sexuality as expression, would you agree with it there? Because the Constitution is what the federal citizens that's what citizens of the country have as rights go, and then conservatives will say, well, social issues are more for the states. So where do you draw that line?
I think that the line should be drawn when it comes to legislation. I believe that personal expression should never be hindered, but oftentimes it sort of starts to creep in when we talk about discrimination and what should or shouldn't be allowed, what should be promoted. So I think anyone should be able to say anything they want, put themselves out there however they want. But when we start to legislate it, for example, laws about who can go in a bathroom, laws about who can marry who, that should be delegated more to private property and private citizens' rights.
So how would you take the government out of it? Because that's the bigger problem, which is, okay, we can do that, but how necessarily do we do that?
Well, we should stop passing laws that are designed to promote certain social or sexual agendas. That should be left up to, first and foremost, people's personal experiences and choices, and then also to the states. So we should stop pushing it in legislation. And then if there are federal laws that are legislating sexuality or morality, I would like to see those repealed. And we could at least, find a few that everyone could sort of agree on, that they're being abused and start to repeal those.
So with transgender bathrooms, would you rather it being left up to the states or to or well rather well not the federal government. You made that quite clear. But what about what because there's a whole issue of if if I'm a man and I become a woman, I still have the same traits as a man and the same for the most part, same genitalia as a man, and pretty much I'm able to go into the bathroom and pee right next to 4-year-old little girls. So how would you address the situation? Because there's the issue of okay, we can start up transgender bathrooms, but what if there's the cases of churches? Some churches won't want to do that. So how would you handle it?
I think that should be handled on a private property right and through local social norms. I've actually never been sexually assaulted in a bathroom. It's not a big concern of mine. That's probably because it's mostly women who go in them.
Yeah,
But
I was about
yeah,
to point that out.
I've also never been sexually assaulted by a transgender person. I've
Well,
never,
there's the case of
you
them
know,
being 1% of the population, but we'll give you that.
yeah, yeah. So I'm not really that concerned with it. And I don't mean to belittle them or make transgender people feel like I don't care about their concerns, but I've just never, I've never had a bad bathroom experience with a transgender person. Really, to me, I just don't want to have any sexual experience at all in a bathroom because that's not why I'm in the bathroom.
Good point. Sean Hannity. So, another issue that has been like a big one, is healthcare. You're in no, you're a libertarian and
Mhm.
hopefully right wing, correct?
Well, I
Hopefully.
wouldn't say left wing or right wing. I would say that I am very much a person who thinks that it should be a people versus government, government versus people. That's our issue. So I wouldn't, I'm definitely not a libertarian, if that's what you mean. But I try not to identify with the quote unquote right wing, especially because I'm in a district where 87% of my constituents voted for Hillary Clinton.
um, yeah, but when it comes to healthcare, 70% of the people residing where in your district vote for Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was big with globalized healthcare. How would you handle it to a population that is begging for universal healthcare? How would you tell them? Because I've researched this. Hopefully you stated that you wanted to make it more of a private industry
Mm-hmm.
sort of plan. So how would you tell the population, okay, you're not going to get what you want, but this is so much better.
Well, that's the first thing you have to convey is that private healthcare, when done properly, is better. It's going to provide more affordable healthcare. It's going to provide better quality healthcare, and it's going to provide better options in healthcare. That's the first place to start. And I would also explain that special interest groups have been meddling and lobbying in the healthcare industry since the 1800s. Notoriously, the AMA, they have pushed heavy licensure and regulations to squeeze other people out of practice to make it so that only doctors can practice medicine. Their version of what a doctor is, their definition. Doctors will get paid more, and now you have health insurance companies. For example, Blue Cross in the early 1900s, they started to really restrict insurance practices. It makes it difficult for you to really get the best services when only a small number of providers are able to give those services.
Right.
So that's
So
where I'd start.
yeah. So with Paul Ryan's in healthcare, you would be against or for that? Because
I would
there's been an ongoing battle with the GOP and Rand Paul when it comes to healthcare, and the libertarians have kind of got pushed towards the side of Rand Paul, supporting him, and then we have the really big establishment conservatives heading towards Paul Ryan. So who would you go with on that affair?
I would definitely be more inclined to support Rand Paul's bill. It's 4 pages long. I read it a few days ago. I don't have it all memorized, but I like that it's only 4 pages long. That's a good sign.
Well,
Because
yeah, it could just be 4 pages of socialism. So I
right,
mean,
but sure, but 4 pages is generally a good sign. It's going to be shorter. That means there's going to be less regulations and restrictions on the market. People should be allowed to choose which healthcare provider they want. For example, they should be able to cross state borders to choose healthcare. Um, I don't want to see large insurance companies benefiting financially while everyone else is pushed out. And the GOP bill, it just looks like more of the same. It's just Obamacare repackaged.
yeah, like Rand Paul said, Obamacare light. Now,
Mm-hmm.
we've had a big problem with medication and pharmacies boosting the prices in medication and drugs. How would you resolve that with, like, when we saw with the EpiPen? How would you resolve that with, as a Congress member? Because some people are saying it's because of regulation, and other people are saying it's because of unfair patents being made in the economy. So how would you handle that?
Okay, I think there are two issues here. So one, I do agree that patents are government forced monopolies. I work in the legal field. I see it. I understand that inventors are going to say, oh, no, it's unfair. They're going to scream, don't take away my patent. Sometimes patents just are not in the best interest of the public as a whole. And the other part of that, though, is the FDA. So, for example, the EpiPen had already run out. The patent was expired, but the FDA takes forever to approve drugs, and it just takes so long for someone to push through even a generic that what was his name, Martin Shkreli, he was able to clean up and make tons of money on that HIV drug until someone was able to go through and get a generic on it because he knew that the FDA would just hinder anyone and it would drag on and he could rake in all the dough until that FDA regulatory process was finalized.
Yeah. So let's go on to the issue of gun rights. So you said you're a big fan of the Constitution, as most of us are. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so with the Second Amendment, we saw for the past 8 years the big attack on guns and gun owners. um and how would you address that, and how would you tell people who are with the NRA, and people who are concealed carriers and gun owners themselves? How would you address this to them and tell them that this that we're going to protect you? And how would you protect the Second Amendment? Because so far all I've seen is the Republicans saying we're going to give you your constitutional rights through a bigger government, which kind of raises my eyebrows. So how would you do that?
Well, I'm very committed to upholding Second Amendment rights. I don't believe we need any more federal laws doing background checks, regulating firearms. I don't think we need to protect people from semi automatic weapons. I would absolutely vote no on any laws restricting gun use. And I'm going to vote no on background checks as well.
Background checks, really?
Absolutely.
Why?
Because
Well,
what is a
why is
background
that?
check? What are
What?
we doing? What are we doing when we background check is so vague? What qualifies as a background check? What if you had a mental health issue 20 years ago, but now it's on the record? Are you not able to carry a firearm because maybe someone views you as mentally unstable? That doesn't seem fair.
That's pretty bland. I mean, if a doctor's diagnosing you as mentally unstable, doesn't that raise some concerns of, like, this person shouldn't have getting shouldn't be concealing a gun or carrying a gun?
What's the criteria of a background check and how does someone diagnose someone else as mentally unstable? What are the actual criteria for that? It's really open to doctor's interpretation. And that's where we start to kind of toe the line on what is constitutional freedom and what is just a doctor's interpretation. Are we keeping someone safe or
So
are we locking them
how
up?
would we protect people from uh criminals getting guns through stores, Like they can, a criminal can easily, if there's no background checks. I mean, I'm not a fan of them, but if there's no background checks, anyone can get a gun.
Well, we do have background checks in place now, right?
Yeah, and they're retarded. I mean, there's a difference.
Yeah,
Yeah, but there's a difference between we can have background checks and then enforcing background checks with other kinds of criteria of, you, this person can get a gun. There's a difference between background checks and then the criteria to get a gun.
sure. So I'm a little bit concerned because I've yet to hear a background check that I feel was fair and safe. For example, I work in litigation in Los Angeles, and one of the issues that I come up with very often is when people get temporary restraining orders filed against them. If you have what's called a temporary restraining order, or as we call it, a TRO for short, filed against you, you're not allowed to own a firearm. And it's very easy to get a TRO filed against you by an ex-lover or an ex-roommate who just has a grudge against you. They can make something up, go into court, cry about it, bam, your rights are revoked. No gun for you because someone doesn't like you.
Yeah, but I mean, that's not listing a background check. That's more of like the criteria of whether or not you can get a gun. That has really nothing to do with a background check.
Well, when it expires, now it's on your background. So after that temporary restraining order has expired, if someone does a search, it still shows up, at least in the state of California, that at one point you were flagged to not own a firearm.
Okay. So with let's get on to another point, which is
Sure.
let's go to abortion. So this has been I would think the second hottest issue. Number one is healthcare. Number two, I think, is pro-choice versus pro-life. So and what I've seen is the liberal media lying. Not only are they saying what abortion is, but they're lying about it. Like with Planned Parenthood, they lied about Planned Parenthood being 3% of their services doing abortion. That is completely false. They also lied with Planned Parent. Actually, people from Planned Parenthood who used to work there have said that there are abortion quotas, and that if they reach a certain number of abortions, they get a bonus. And they've also lied about abortion, where they lied about how the procedure works. They lied about how many about rape victims and abortions. So, first of all, what's your stance?
Okay, so Planned Parenthood, that sounds to me immediately like federal health care. Everyone is up in arms, especially in my state, about Planned Parenthood being defunded. I don't believe healthcare should be left up to the federal government. So the first thing I would say is that I am actually okay with Planned Parenthood being defunded on a federal level. For a really liberal state like mine, if we want to come across and do our own Planned Parenthood on a state level, then that should be up to the people. We should be more transparent and honest, however, about what services they provide, what abortion is, what it is not, statistics, especially if that's going to come from public, like taxpayer-funded money. There needs to be transparency about what people are paying for.
Er,
So that's the first thing I have to say about it.
And then with the issue of pro-life versus pro-choice.
So this, I think, is another issue where there's two very hotly contested points of view. One is that the federal government shouldn't have any say over your body. The other would be that it's murder. People don't seem to agree on it. I think this is something that should be left up to a vote. And if it's already been decided by a vote in certain areas, that's how it should be upheld. It's very uncomfortable, but I really think that it should be left up to the state. And that my personal view on it isn't enough to hold sway over maybe the rest of my constituents. And most of the people in my jurisdiction are going to be pro-choice.
So you would rather a federal vote?
No. At a state level.
At a state level, okay. But that's kind of what bothers some conservatives, is that when we can say the certain that in certain areas people are allowed to vote what is okay and what is not. I know that I understand that, maybe we shouldn't be pushing morals on each other, but when is
Mhm.
there the baseline, like it is okay to realize that this is wrong and this has nothing to do um with our country, and this is absolutely terrible, and when can we draw that line? Because abortion itself is killing a child. There's no way around saying that. So are we, so when are we allowed to just say this is wrong, and no matter any kind of vote, the truth is not this is a Pope John Paul II great quote: the truth is not described by a popular vote. So when do we draw that line?
I understand what you're saying. I think this particular issue, our country is gridlocked on it. And that if we are to go ahead and legislate and say abortion should be illegal, it's going to be disastrous for us. I think that we're not at a point right now where we can go ahead and pass a federal law saying that it's illegal because most people don't agree.
But if 50% of people said murder was okay, are we going to leave murder to the states?
No, we're not going to leave murder to the states. But that's also kind of a hypothetical. Like, we know that 50% aren't going to think murder's okay. Thankfully, we already have laws passed saying that it's not.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we're saying with abortion, because abortion itself
Mm-hmm.
is killing. So what's the difference?
Well, I mean, I might agree with you on this, but the trouble is that a good chunk of the country just doesn't agree. They just don't see it that way, and it's like I have to make the argument for them, even though I may not necessarily side with them um, when it comes to morality. But they don't see it as a life. At certain points, they see it as a clump of cells.
I'm, but at the same time, I can see anyone has a clump of cells. I mean, that's
Sure,
so
sure.
so there. It's important to bring up hypotheticals in this, because any single law, if we're going to decide it by if it's decisive in whether or not people agree with it statistically, why even bother? Like if we're not going to decide whether something is wrong or right,
Hmm.
then what even is the point? Because if abortion if abortion is killing a child, and some people say it's okay, but there's a difference between murder and abortion. I mean, I may be rambling right now, but where's that difference?
You're asking me where that difference is.
Yeah.
I don't think that I'm going to be the one solely to decide it. I think that we're going to have to sway public opinion on that issue. And right now, public opinion is not swayed. I could write a 100-page long manifesto explaining it, and when it comes right down to it, it's going to be an emotional argument for women who say, "No, how dare you make me do this? I don't want to do it," and they're going to do it. They're going to go and do whatever they want to do. So I just don't see how legislating it right now is actually going to make there be less abortions.
All right. So thank you, because that takes a lot of guts to talk about that issue. So I'd like to thank you. So next, let's talk about tax reform. So what would
Yes.
you like to see with taxes? Because there's the issue of the flat tax, then there's the issue of a progressive tax, and then there's an issue of let's let the states decide, and then say no, let's let local governments decide, like cities and towns. And then there's the issue of what taxes, besides the income tax, should we approve of, and which are okay. So where do you align with when it comes to taxes?
I would love to see the abolishment of income tax across the board. I would
So how
love
would
to
how
see
would
it
we
go
tax
away.
citizens?
Well, we have excise taxes, there are tariffs. I don't agree with all tariffs, but there's a limited number of tariffs. There are some property taxes. I think there are plenty of taxes.
But but isn't the income tax the most effective? I mean, it's proven the most effective out of all taxes. So there's a property tax, but the property there isn't it just so much simpler to just say this person just has to pay this much percentage of how much they make, than to say, okay, you have to pay this much for this product, and then if you're shipping somewhere here, you got to pay an extra tax, and then if you live in somewhere, you have to pay a tax for that, and then if you're buying a certain product. I repeated that.
Mm-hmm.
If so, where do we? So don't you say that that's a little bit of a funky maneuver? Government has to make this person pay the, which by the way can, which is 10%, which isn't even what Rand Paul said, which is more like 15%. So why can't we do that?
Well, I think a flat tax would be better than what we have now. But I think there's some question as to whether or not the 16th Amendment was fully ratified. I think that income tax is like a lesser form of slavery. The government is taking money that you worked for. It didn't work for it. You worked for
But
it.
then isn't that any sort of tax? I mean, isn't that any kind of like property tax, sales tax?
Not
Uh,
necessarily. Not
the
necessarily.
what's the difference
There's
between an income
inheritance
tax?
tax.
What's the difference between an income tax and a
Yeah.
property tax?
Well, not everybody works for literally every single piece of their money. Some people receive money through inheritance, through trusts. You might get a shareholder payouts. I guess it's more like what is the difference between working and not working?
Yeah, but can't. But wouldn't that just all come down to salary?
I don't
Like
think so.
how much you get paid year, like annually?
Mhm.
If you
I don't really see it that way.
if you're no matter like if you're working or not.
Hmm.
If I'm getting $0 if I'm getting $0 a year, then I'm not then I pay $0 to the government. If I get $5 a year, I'm gonna do math right now, 50 cents to the government,
Okay.
based on 10% income tax. If I pay so it doesn't matter if you work for it or not. It's just how much you're getting a year.
Why do we owe it to them? Why do we owe our wages to the federal government?
What's the difference between property tax and non-property tax? It's the same thing.
I don't think so.
I
I
don't
mean, why do
don't
I
think
owe?
I don't, I don't we don't owe anything to the government,
Okay.
as like 90% of the population does as well.
Sorry, you broke up there
So
just
we need what?
you broke up there just a little. You're
Oh,
back.
so 99% of the population wants a government, and how do we keep a government? Through taxes. And there's no difference between the property tax or the income tax.
Well, that's your opinion.
What?
That's your opinion. There is technically a difference.
There is a
You can
difference,
look it up in
but
tax law.
yes, okay, there's a difference, but between property tax, all the different taxes that we can put up against the income tax, there's no difference except just funky maneuvers that the government has to make. Why do we owe anything to the government? We don't. Honestly, the government sucks, and we shouldn't be paying anything to them. But guess what? We need some way to run the government, and the government needs money. So
Well, if we get rid of income tax, that's about I think it's about 45% of our taxes. That puts us back to the roughly the federal budget that we would have back in the late 90s, um, which should be around close to what we spend on
wait,
the defense. So if we were to cut some of our military spending, maybe just for aggressive wars, military expansionism, it might even out.
so by cutting taxes, we're gonna be balancing a budget
Absolutely. You got to cut taxes at the same time that
as
you,
decreasing spending is what you mean,
yes,
hopefully. Okay.
absolutely.
So let's move on to decreasing spending. How do you plan to decrease spending while lowering taxes?
Okay. We need free markets. So that means deregulation and it means proper deregulation. not pick and choose our favorite two or three things to deregulate. Does
Mm-hmm.
that make sense? So
Yes,
for
that.
example, when we say deregulate healthcare, I mean actually, deregulate, get rid of at least the majority of the regulations on it. Let the free
Yeah,
market
not
provide more options.
subsidizing, uh, how insurance companies and then deregulate medical.
Correct.
Um, and then when it comes to the issue of military, what do you plan to do there?
I think that it's okay to have a strong national defense. I don't think we just should have just put troops in Syria, for example. There's no reason that we should be interfering in foreign affairs. Um, it's fine for us to be, strong at home, but we don't need to be putting troops on the ground in other countries that have no plans to attack us or that have no, viable military credit to attack us. Like, for example, if someone threatens, we're going to get you, and they obviously don't have the manpower or the rocket power or the technology, maybe it's an idle threat. Doesn't mean we need to go
So,
in there and take them over.
so if it's so you're saying that if someone were to threaten us, you would want to wait until they attack us here.
No, we need to pay attention to credible threats. For example, Iraq, weapons of mass destruction. That wasn't real. I think most people know now that wasn't real. We shouldn't have gone
Yes,
there.
yes, yes. You don't need to embarrass me now, okay? I was
I'm sure,
eight.
but
I was
you know
eight.
that. You know that.
Well, was I eight? I think I was like 4. Maybe 3. I don't know. I believed
Yeah,
anything my parents told me.
sure.
Um, s but with interventionism and non-interventionism, are we going to be isolationists? Uh,
No, because I think we should have free trade and that we should have friendly relations with as many countries as possible.
when it comes to the issue of military.
Well, what is your definition of isolationist?
Non-interventionism. Like don't interfere interfere in foreign affairs. Like the Benjamin Franklin, or was it the Benjamin Franklin good love your neighbor policy.
Okay, sorry, just plugging my phone in.
Yeah.
Okay, so we should have friendly relations with foreign nations. I don't think that we need to have military troops in other countries, especially when it's uninvited. I think that it's reasonable for us to defend our allies to a certain extent, depending on what got them into that trouble.
Hmm. Okay, that
Does
that
that make a
sounds
little more
reasonable.
sense?
But with my job, I have to challenge you on everything. So, um, but what if let's say the issue with Syria, with setting up safe zones in the
Okay.
Middle East. Would you favor that?
No.
Why not?
Why are we involved?
Because they're coming over here. They
Why were we involved, is what I mean. Let's go back in time and
okay.
look at what happened back there. Why did Barack Obama's administration issue drone strikes there a few years ago? What was that about? Why are we propping up foreign regimes? Now we have to go and be involved in this refugee crisis because we've caused it. Maybe we weren't the sole cause. This is a big part of my platform when I'm running, like with homelessness. Homelessness is a huge issue in my particular district. We have over 89,000 homeless people in Los Angeles County. We should look at the homelessness on a global level too. We should stop bombing people, and then we're not going to have these refugee crises.
Hmm. All right. And good points. So let's go to, now we're in the Middle East. Let's talk about refugees. Would you support bringing over refugees into our country, and would you want to extremely vet them, as Donald Trump says?
I think it's reasonable to vet refugees you bring into the country. I don't necessarily think we need to bring more refugees into the country because I don't believe we have the financial or domestic structure to handle them right now. And I think that's really sad, but I think it's reality.
Mm. All right. So in the case of the veterans and refugees, should we be focusing more on veterans, or should we be looking towards refugees, to the new coming people into our country, or should we be thinking about the people who served and protected?
We should definitely take care of veterans. I think the best thing we could do to take care of veterans is to stop sending them over into aggressive wars where they are injured, maimed, and killed for no reason. So I think that should be the starting point.
Okay, so you've been saying aggressive war. What give examples of an aggressive war?
Iraq, I would say most of the military action post September 11th. I would, yeah, I think that that was just way overboard. It's caused us to, how many, we've lost over 15,000 American soldiers. It's probably higher than that. I think that statistic that I just cited is from like 2011. Um, let's see. So Syria, most recently, there's no reason for us to be over there. I would call that aggressive.
Yeah. All right. You've good points that you're bringing out. I mean, I can't challenge you there. I mean, those are just facts. Um, but let's go into let me take a look at your website again.
Sure.
Which is Angela McArdle for Congress.com.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, if my thing will load. Man, I hate my internet service. It has
Me
caused
too.
so many distractions. All right. Uh-oh. Oh, yeah, okay. Um, yeah. So let's keep going with foreign policy. Would you support foreign aid to an extent?
I don't support foreign aid. I'm not crazy. I don't think that we should cut it 100% right now, but I think we should taper it off. I think that it's ridiculous that we give so much money to Israel. I think they're going to be just fine without our money. That doesn't mean that I'm
Well,
disparaging. That
well,
doesn't
I
mean I'm
mean,
disparaging
I,
Israelis, but I think that they're going to be okay without our money.
I don't know.
Okay.
I
Okay.
mean,
Tell me about Israel.
Israel, I mean, they have a good economy, strong army,
Okay.
and they're being hunting
Mm-hmm.
down. They're being hunted down by wolves called the Palestinians. I mean, the Palestinians are out for blood. The two-state solution is terrible. The Palestinians are terrorists. Can we agree with that?
I would not say that every Palestinian is a terrorist.
Okay, no, yeah, not and not every person in Germany during the times of Hitler was a Nazi, but the overwhelming majority of of Palestinians, not the overwhelming, but a majority, support invading Israel and uh, eradicating them. The
Okay.
Palestinian government pays people to uh to exterminate Israelis. You get paid by the Palestinian government to kill off Israelis.
Does Israel have the same policy about Palestine?
Not that I heard of.
Okay. Because it seems to me like there's a lot of fault with both parties.
Oh,
And
of course. Oh,
I
of
think that's a
course.
good reason to stay out of it.
Yeah,
Because
there's
even
a
though
lot
I
of fault, but we have to look at Palestine versus Israel with Donald Trump saying, "Yes, maybe we should be neutral." That is
mhm.
something that somewhat I agree with because there's a fault on both sides, but it has come from the Palestinians. I mean this notion that Palestinians have been just as harmful and ruthless towards Iraqis, vice versa. No, they haven't. Palestinians have been ruthless to Israel. And
They
that
really
that's
they
just a
don't
fact.
have any power right now though. Do they? I mean, they don't really have any power
Ugh, I mean,
in Palestine.
yeah, yeah,
They're
they do.
pretty much toothless. They have like almost no infrastructure. The Gaza Strip is just destroyed. You know, I don't
But
like.
the overwhelming fun spending is just military to exterminate Israelis. Their only goal is to just chip off as much of the West Bank as possible until they have an opening.
Can Israel defend themselves though?
They can, and they've been trying.
Okay.
Can we cut them some slack that they've been trying?
I think that Israel and Palestine could probably they could probably work that out on their own, is what I'm saying. I'm not going to come out as pro-Israel or
Mm,
pro-Palestine. Just
but when Benjamin Netanyahu invites the Palestinian leader 10 times to negotiate and doesn't
Mm-hmm.
show up 8 times out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's what I last heard. What it originally was that he didn't show up at all. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that Israel has been trying very hard, but the two-state solution is just the biggest compromise that they can think of, because they're trying, and it's really hard to be Benjamin Netanyahu right now, because he's fighting off people who just want to kill him. That's all they want to do.
Well, I don't think he's totally innocent, but
He's
I
not
would
he's
stick
not totally in.
firmly, yeah, I would stick firmly to my position that we just shouldn't be involved in that conflict because
All right.
it's not even helping. We haven't helped. It's a disaster.
Yeah.
But
But then again, all we've been doing is just the UN affairs, and I mean, we haven't had Israel's back at all. The Obama administration has pretty much slapped him with his 10-ton pen and paper cross of Israel. But let's so you've been more for states' rights as we've been speaking. Would you be for states' rights when it comes to drugs, just in general?
sure, I'm really in support of California's cannabis legalization proposition, for example. I think that that's a very good thing.
Mm-hmm. So would you say just all drugs in general, or are there
Yeah,
some limits?
absolutely. I would say all drugs in general.
Okay, I agree with that, but again, I always have to counter you. So, when it comes to all drugs, there are some drugs out there that are very hot, that are very bad. Like
Yeah,
they're just bad, and
absolutely.
they make people hostile. They make people angry.
Hmm.
Why should we be leaving it up to the states? Because we're already in a problem now when it comes
Hmm.
to opioids,
Hmm.
and they're being imported, and it's destroying our country. So why should we
Hmm.
be letting the states decide when just legalizing it isn't going to make anything better?
Well, it seems as though the big drug epidemic right now is taking place in a drug that's not only prescribed and prescribed too much by doctors. So I don't understand how making drugs illegal is going to fix the problem. Drugs, the rate of recidivism after getting out of prison is it's no better. People go back to doing drugs. Uh, there's really just no benefit to making them illegal. People still do them. People are still addicted. Making it illegal doesn't solve an addiction.
Yeah, but I mean, it's been proven that making something illegal makes less consumption of it. So making something
Uh,
legal. Hold on, you're cutting out. Wait, you're cutting out. What'd you say?
I don't think it's been proven that making something illegal makes people less likely to do it. It increases the black
Yes.
market.
No. Yes, but there's been less consumption of it in general if it's illegal. That's a fact. When it came to abortion, for Roe v. Wade, there was more abortions. When it came to states' rights, when it comes to terms of marijuana, less people did it after before the Supreme Court announced giving the states right to legalize it, and then more people did it after when
Or
what?
or maybe more people felt safe in reporting their consumption of cannabis because they felt that they were less likely to be socially isolated, ostracized, lose their jobs, lose credibility, uh, with their family, with their church, etc. It doesn't necessarily reflect a change in usage, but it can reflect a change in drug reporting.
Hmm. Uh, let me see. Um, n- Not exactly. Do you want me to bring up some statistics, like when it came to prohibition? Actually, more when it came to prohibition, more there was actually less consumption of alcohol than there was after.
I have
When it
read
came,
studies that conflict that.
really,
Yeah, I think you can find studies that argue both sides.
yeah. So Sorry, you just
Yeah, it's a reason to not always trust statistics is because sometimes they're motivated by the people who publish those studies.
yeah. So let's just take our last point, and then I guess I'll ship you off. When it comes to the economy, what would you want to see? Just if you could put it out in one piece of paper, or not in one piece of paper, on one piece of legislation to fix the economy, because we're in a terrible problem when it comes to the economy, and we need to fix it somehow. What would you do?
One piece of paper, that's short. I'd probably take 3 or 4 pieces of paper. I think that deregulating energy sectors would help. I think that deregulating health insurance markets would help. And I think restoring the country to sound money would help.
Hmm.
So
All
I
right.
guess I'd have to take
Well,
a third of a page for each.
so that would mean cutting energy department, cutting, like, what departments would you just slash?
Rather than slash a whole department, I'd look at the regulations in those departments and I'd start there. And I would cut everything that restricts the growth of the energy sector. So I don't mean just oil and coal. You know, everybody in California hates hearing oil and coal. All my constituents say that. But there are specifically, like, there are regulations that are like sin taxes that make it difficult for alternative energy companies to compete. If they pollute, the same amount that an oil company pollutes, it puts them out of business. The tax, the oil company just writes it off. The repeal of any regulation that makes it difficult for any competitive alternative energy company or a health insurance company repealed.
All right. Thank you for coming on. It was really fun. And I think that'll wrap it up. Yep. Thank you for watching. This was an LNN exclusive. You can find it on LNN Youth, or you can find it here. You can check her out on Angela for Congress, and I will see you guys later. Have a nice time. Wait.